Hi, this is Who, and I am going to say something today. So I've got a lot of requests to ask about my build, ask about my setups, what I fly, what makes it look so nice. It's not really much of anything. Pretty much common sense. A lot of common sense, a lot of logic, and a lot of time. But either way, this is what I found out. Here's my setup. This is the original one, Nano Vespa 80. We're running RakonHeli, Ducts, propellers, Racerstar 1103, 10,000 kV. I believe I have a hobby wing stack in here. 20 by 20 with a split V2, and I think an AKK VTX simple setup spectrum and a little cap for that extra noise. Anyway, so this setup, I mean, where to begin? It's tight. Everything's really tight. You had to get really creative, play a little game of Tetris to put it together. But what I was looking for ultimately was a small package carrying an HD drone, HD camera, and maneuverable through spaces. I know right away, some people looking at the props, looking at the ducts, RakonHeli, why these props are unbalanced. Why would you go with props like that? And let me just give it to you straight. We're flying micros here. I can't imagine a 40 millimeter propeller this size made out of the factory, thousands at a time. It's gonna be balanced. I think we're asking for a lot when you're trying to be getting these micro blades balanced, getting the motors to be on point. I mean, these things are naturally small. They carry a lot of noise with them inherently. They're just full of it. So why fight something you're not going to be able to perfect? It's a very logical conclusion when you come down to the end of it. I can sit here all day long and sit for it on a month with black box, plasma tree, trying to break down why I get that yaw twitch, why you get some vibrations. That's what these things are. They're tiny, they're full of vibrations and a ton of electrical noise. Especially when you're flying, matching these high kV small props with higher S batteries, but I'll get into that in a minute. So we accept that these are noisy. They're noisy by nature. So we'll take that, and the goal is, I guess, ultimately not to get the biggest issue most FPV pilots have ever dealt with on a badly tuned or shaky quad is jello, which we'll get in bright light situations. I don't fly many bright light situations. It doesn't affect me much, but there's a time when I do have to fly in brighter light, brighter exposed areas, and I want to make sure that the quad is, let me rephrase that the camera is as noise free as possible. So what I've done for the V1, I call this my V1 because it was the first build. I used some double-sided tape right here on the bottom on the base plate, put a piece of foam in between that, another piece of double-sided tape, and mounted the camera on the original RunCam camera mount. What this does is let the camera have a little bit of wiggle. Wiggle is good, wiggle is good. I will say that 1,000 times. The wiggle is good, vibrations are bad. It came really close to the standoffs, so I had to put a little bit double-sided tape just to eat up any of that noise it might get during flight. Sorry if that's out of focus, but I think the explanation and that out of focus shot should explain it to you. What I'm doing is basically making the camera independent of the noise in the quad. Still a little bit of room in the top plate, just a hair. And the top plate is where V2 goes to. So V2 is mounted to the top plate. This is the 100 millimeter. The top plate, if you think about it, is going to be the spot least likely to have vibrations. When you're talking about all four motors on the bottom plate, these ducts, the propellers. Oh, hey, look, a broken duct. That would explain a few things today. All your noise is going to be on that bottom plate and in the standoffs. And standoffs probably independent because all these motors are pulling in all sorts of directions. So right away I knew I could not mount to the standoffs. The jello was just disgusting. TPU doesn't change it, and nothing fixes it. But mounting to the top plate on this one worked. It's got enough wiggle. Wiggle is good. When it's mounted to the hard parts of the frame, you're going to get vibrations, in turn jello. I don't run any ND filters. I found that any of these micro ND filters just aren't up to par. Aren't like the Polar Pros for the GoPros, which are fantastic. They tend to be like almost like window tint material, which, come on, nobody wants that extra magenta thrown onto their video. Not only that, unnecessary grain when you're in low light situations, which I'm in a lot. So ultimately, remember, the takeaway from all of this is these micro quads are noisy by nature. They have a ton of vibrations through any which motor, prop, wiring, voltage output, you name it. Like that's why I threw the cap on here. I threw the cap on this one on the XT30. The cap just took up any of that extra noise, which I ended up finding would give me yaw jitters, which we all hate. Seemed to be just the excess noise flowing out the motors and spitting it out. So that cap took care of that. Aside from that, I really think that's all I had to say about this today. I'm going to make another video about the back end, what I do with my footage once I download it to the computer and process it through RealSteady and take you through the editing process. We'll get to that one sometime next week. I hope you learned something today. I'll be back next week to say something else.